Gears of War 4, Reiner, I don't know what you think about this. I don't know your score. I don't know anything. Please, just start.
I don't either, actually. I just played it 5 minutes and just put some words on a doc and called it a review.
That's great information to get out there.
Hey,
Now,
Joe, gussy this up, would you?
what did you give it?
9.
Holy cow.
Point.
What?
2.
What?
5.
2.9?
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah,
it's a
I
high
didn't know you
score.
liked it that much. What pushed it over the top for you?
It is really fun, Ben Hansen. It's a charming
Hilarious.
game.
Little romp.
So no, you know what's interesting? That was a dumb joke, but it actually kind of speaks to the beginning of the game, where all along they've been painting this Gears of War 4 new developer, new heroes, new enemies. You know, the Swarm, JD Phoenix, the Coalition developing new weapons. You know, they're really kind of trying to create a new saga for Gears of War, and that begins, and it's very colorful. And there's a point in the game where JD Phoenix and Kate and Val, the three main characters, are on this beautiful...
Wait a minute. Val?
Yeah.
Del?
Or Del, sorry.
Okay.
The three main characters are on this this sunny hillside. It's very colorful, green, very different than what you saw in the
Are the
other
characters,
games.
are they like blinded, like they're coming outside with
they're
something
like,
like,
oh.
what are these colors?
It's like a Disney movie. It's like...
Is Stallone in it? Is it?
But there's a point where they find a cocoon, and Kate's talking about it, and she's like looking at it. She's like, you know, caterpillar's ugly, and you know, kind of challenging life up to this point, and then it emerges as something more dynamic and beautiful. And I was just kind of like, holy crap, that's a biting commentary about this series of you know, the grays and browns of old. I think they're kind of going into that where they're trying something different here.
And there's also cocoons throughout the rest of the game as little pods, right?
Yeah. Well, that's where they go too. So it's like the whole first act of the game is like you are taking on cog robots. There isn't any like living enemies at this point, and it's
weird. I didn't know that.
You are taking on like a whole robotic army, and your character JD is very much like more the DNA of Nathan Drake than anybody from the previous games. The whole dude bro thing is gone. It is more of a kind of snarky, funny take on it.
Sincerely funny or just trying to be funny?
Yeah, no, it is actually. I even talked to Matt Miller about this, who's just started playing. I was like, that dialogue's pretty good, right? And he's like, yeah, it's actually really kind of funny, and I like where it's going. Well, it stays that way for about 2 acts. And then you run into Marcus Phoenix.
Uh-huh.
And it becomes kind of a reunion game. I won't go into what that means necessarily, but from there on in, it is very much like retreading familiar territory for Gears of War. And that's not a bad thing, mind you. It's just, wow, they really went for it in creating something new and then kind of retreated to the past for the remainder of the game.
You would think kind of the first game from a new studio would have the opposite structure.
Yeah, you think it'd go the other way. But no, it's very much like Force Awakens, actually, where, hey, here's some new characters, and oh, here's all the other guys. That's kind of like where that movie went.
Uh-huh.
They do the kind of the same thing, but even more so. And by the end of the game, you're like, okay, we're back at like kind of square one for Gears of War. And again, that's not bad because they do a really great job with the combat, the scenarios, the set piece moments, the characters, the weapons. The new weapons are a lot of fun. That whole campaign, which you could play cooperatively, you could do it online or locally, which is very cool.
Cross-platform, PC, Xbox One.
And
future rules.
The second player can be either character, the first JD, but it's super fun, and there's not much to complain about in that campaign other than like, oh, we're going here again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's okay. Like I was really into like this whole new thing they set up, and it's almost got like a Robin Hood vibe at the beginning, where JD his crew is living on the outskirts of town. They're not playing by COG rules. They're outsiders. They're breaking into the city to steal something, you know? So it's like, okay, this is very cool. I like this whole world they've set up, this whole dynamic of like these small civilizations outside of these really protected cities.
So what do they get out of going back to the old well so much by the end of the game? Like, what's the plus side of that?
It's fan service. It's just like Star Wars, right? Like, oh yeah, Chewbacca's back. R2-D2,
Hey,
he's no longer
Chewbacca?
under a sheet. He's alive again.
Yeah.
Well, but it is a continuation of Marcus's sort of narrative, right? I mean, the Star Wars characters weren't there for no reason. I mean, we wanted to see
it is
what's
JD's
happening with
narrative
Han.
now.
It is? Okay.
Yeah, it is very much their story. And that stays true through the whole game. And again, I don't want to go into specifics, but this is a campaign. If you do like cool video game stories and campaigns, this is one you should play.
Okay. All right.
But, you know, they do a pretty good job of kind of, if you haven't played a Gears game before, of kind of telling you what happened. The prologue of the game goes through all the wars, the Pendulum War, 2 years before E-Day, and then 17 years after, where you see it all end. So you get a full picture of what happened in
At
this
one
series.
time, we made Gears of War Judgment. They tell the full story.
They leave that out. But yeah, you get a nice little build up there, and it's really artfully done. And the first part of that, the Pendulum Wars in the prologue, feels like, I was like, this game doesn't look good. This looks like an Xbox 360 game. And that's intentional on their part, I think. Like, the visuals build up in each of those little prologue chapters.
Really?
So it's
And
like
the scale, too, of the enemies you're taking on and what you're doing. And by the end, it's like, you see like these new weather effects and all this of the new game. And it's like, holy crap, like this looks really good now.
wait a minute, you're playing through?
Mhm.
Oh,
You play through all these
that's
little
really
wrinkles in the
interesting.
history of Gears. And then, it kind of hits present day, which is 25 years after the events of the last game. I
So the
believe, or something like
prequel
that.
stuff to Gears feels like a Xbox One game or something, kind of?
Xbox 360 game. Yeah,
Well, it debuted on 360.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are
I
we
thought-
confused on the Xbox One thing? Are we talking about different things?
I meant the original.
Right.
That
of
was on
course.
360. Yeah.
But yeah, I was curious about the weather effects, though, because that seemed like a big
Yeah.
set piece stuff
Well,
they're going
it's,
for.
it's
Does
a
that
big part
actually-
of the lore more
Uh-huh.
than set piece moments where, there's cool times where the wind is really howling. And I won't go into what happens in this world too much. That's part of the story buildup. But there are these storms that, from the events of what happened in the previous games, these storms are kind of destroying the world. That's a big thing. And man's had to learn how to live with these torrid storms.
Yeah.
And you will have battles where the wind is howling, like 100-mile-an-hour winds, and if you free like a metal beam from its casing, the thing's going to go ripping across the terrain. So you could use that to take down enemies, which is cool. But it is very limited. Like, yes, maybe you have 4 instances where the weather is howling and it's in the gameplay, but
What are they
it doesn't last
frightful?
long. It's more of the traditional, tried and true Gears of War gameplay: pop and shoot,
Cool.
chainsaw, using your weapons.
Horde mode's good.
Horde mode's
Multiplayer's good.
Horde mode is awesome. You can now move your base wherever you want. 5 players. Versus mode, the new dodgeball game, which I won't even try to describe. Just look at the review. It isn't dodgeball. There's no ball. Is cool.
head. It doesn't count.
Arms race is awesome though, and that is basically everybody starts with the same weapon. 2 teams. Everybody can only use 1 weapon. First team collectively as a team that gets 3 kills gets a new weapon. So
that's
each
cool.
time it'll switch. And that mode actually teaches you and forces you to use different weapons. I'm one of those players in multiplayer games where I'm always using the same weapon. And I like that. But this I really appreciate because it's fun. And it gets to a point where it's like, oh, I got a sniper rifle. I'm terrible with this. But
Right.
your entire team struggles. And the other team has like a machine gun going against you. They can kind of climb back up. So yeah, it is a lot of fun. Very different. And then there's like a experience thing where you're gaining cards, opening packs of cards. It's not like Halo where the cards are burned after 1 use. Any card you get, you just keep, and then you can kind of level them up as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff there in
Right
terms
on.
of depth. And yeah, it's a great game. 9.25. You should play it. Xbox One, PC.